When global pop icon Henry Cole vanishes from the public eye, the last place anyone expects to find him is shelving paperbacks in a sleepy Vermont bookstore. But for Charlotte Carter, a fiercely independent shop owner with no time for fame or fiction, the stranger behind the flannel and fake name is just another mystery waiting to be shelved. What starts as a quiet connection soon threatens to unravel both their lives, his buried in headlines and pressure, hers built on routine and peace. As the world catches up to their secret, Charlotte must decide if love is worth the chaos, and Henry must learn how to stop performing long enough to be real. Because in a world obsessed with appearances, the hardest thing to be is honest, especially when your heart's on display for everyone to see. Hello family, welcome to Storytime with Imzi. Please subscribe and like, it means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The first snowfall of December had arrived early in Maplewood, layering the sleepy Vermont town in a soft white hush. Charlotte Carter stood outside the hollow shelf, her small independent bookstore tucked between a florist and a diner, hands wrapped around a paper cup of cinnamon-spiced tea. A folding table had been set up on the sidewalk, its surface lined with secondhand books, pine cones, and a chalkboard sign reading, "Holiday Book Drive, give one, get one free. All proceeds go to Maplewood Literacy Fund." She tightened the knit scarf around her neck and brushed a few snowflakes from her sleeve. Her boots crunched as she shifted her weight, glancing toward the corner where the town square was already glowing with Christmas lights. Despite the cold, the day was alive with bustle. Children dragging sleds behind them, an older couple laughing as they wrapped garlands around a lamppost, carolers tuning their voices near the gazebo. Charlotte loved this time of year, not for the tinsel or the music, but because people slowed down. They read more. They gave more. She reached for a book on the table, A Wrinkle in Time, its spine slightly frayed, and was about to return it to its box when someone collided with her from behind, knocking it to the ground. "Oh, sorry, I didn't see." "It's fine," she said instinctively, but then looked up and froze. The man was tall, broad-shouldered, with a charcoal peacoat buttoned up to his neck and a beanie pulled low. Sunglasses masked most of his face, but something about his presence, his posture maybe, felt oddly familiar. Not in a we've met before way, but in a you've been on every magazine cover for the past 5 years kind of way. Still, she wasn't sure. Fame wasn't something she chased. He bent down quickly, picked up the book, and brushed it off before handing it back to her. "You all right?" he asked, his voice low and surprisingly gentle. Charlotte took the book and nodded. "Yeah, you just caught me mid-book appreciation moment." That drew a smile from him, crooked and boyish. Dangerous timing. She narrowed her eyes. "Are you from around here?" "Sort of," he said vaguely. "Passing through." He glanced over the table, fingers hovering above a stack of paperbacks. "This is for charity?" "Yeah," Charlotte said, now watching him with faint suspicion and mild curiosity. "We raise money every year for the local literacy fund. Kids programs. After-school reading clubs." He picked up a copy of To Kill a Mockingbird and turned it over in his hands. "That's a good cause. Do you read?" she asked, arching an eyebrow. He gave her a look that made her question who was being tested. "I do. When I'm not distracted by life." Charlotte laughed softly, then immediately caught herself. There was something too polished about him. Not in a bad way. He wasn't flashy or arrogant. Just trained, like someone used to being seen. She gestured toward the nearby cafe. "If you donate a book, you get a voucher for hot cider next door. It's practically medicinal in this weather." He chuckled. "Sounds like a solid deal." He reached into the inside pocket of his coat, pulled out a small hardcover, On the Road of All Things, and set it gently onto the table. Charlotte blinked. "You carry Kerouac around?" He gave a half-shrug. "It's familiar. Feels like a map sometimes." "Well," she said, slipping a voucher into his hand. "Welcome to Maplewood, Mr. Wanderer." He accepted it with a grin. "Thanks. Maybe I'll stick around." Their eyes met just a little too long. And then, with a casual nod, he turned and walked into the drifting snow, leaving behind only a name she didn't yet know, and the faintest spark of something unexplainable warming the winter air. The next morning, Charlotte unlocked the hollow shelf a few minutes before opening. The bell above the door jingled as she stepped inside, her arms full of freshly baked muffins from Elsie's diner and her breath still visible in the air. The store was cold, the scent of books and cedar-scented candles greeting her like an old friend. She exhaled deeply and smiled. It wasn't glamorous, running a bookstore. Some days it wasn't even profitable. But it was hers. And in a world spinning faster than she liked, that meant something. She was placing the muffins behind the small counter when the bell rang again. Too early for customers. She turned and paused. It was him. Not maybe him, not could be him, definitely him. The man from yesterday. The one with the soft voice, the Kerouac novel, and the sense of mystery that didn't match his too familiar face. Today, he wore a flannel shirt under a canvas jacket, jeans that had seen better days, and a beanie that did very little to hide a face that made people stare. But Charlotte didn't. Not yet. Morning, she said, casual as possible. Back for more book donations or just the cider? He grinned. Maybe both. I was told there might be volunteer opportunities here. She blinked. Volunteer. He nodded, slipping his hands into his pockets. Helping out. Stacking books. Moving boxes. Not that complicated. I mean, sure, we could always use help. I just don't usually get volunteers who look like. She stopped herself. He waited, amused. Like. She tilted her head. Like they belong in a cologne ad. He laughed, genuine and low, and that sound alone seemed to warm the cold room. I promise I'm not here to sell you aftershave. Charlotte considered him for a long second, her instincts sharp. He had charm, yes. But there was something beneath it. Tiredness, maybe. Or something sad. You got a name, Mr. Wanderer? She asked. He hesitated. Then, Nick. Nick Rivers. Her eyebrows arched just slightly, amused. You sure? He grinned again, less confidently this time. Pretty sure. Well, Nick Rivers, she said, reaching under the counter for a clipboard. There's a stack of donation boxes in the back that needs sorting. Think your model hands can handle cardboard and dust. I'll do my best, he replied, rolling up his sleeves. But I should warn you, I've been known to be tragically uncoordinated with tape guns. Charlotte gestured toward the back room. Then it's your lucky day. We're more of a packing twine crowd. As he walked past her, she caught a whiff of something, clean soap and pine, maybe something more expensive buried underneath. She pretended not to notice. He disappeared into the storage room, and she watched the door swing shut behind him. Nick Rivers, she repeated under her breath, smiling to herself. She didn't know exactly who he was. Not yet, but she knew two things. First, he was lying about something. Second, she didn't mind. Not today. By the end of the week, Nick Rivers had become part of the daily rhythm of the hollow shelf. He showed up every morning just after the frost melted from the windows, always with a fresh cup of coffee in hand and that same worn canvas jacket slung over one shoulder. He unpacked boxes, climbed ladders to fix flickering lights, organized shelves with surprising precision, and charmed nearly every customer who walked through the door, especially the elderly ones and wide-eyed children. But Charlotte couldn't quite put her finger on it. It wasn't just that his hands didn't look like they'd ever broken down a moving box before, or the fact that he moved like someone trained to hit marks under studio lights. It wasn't even the strange moment on Tuesday when a young woman passing by the store's front window paused, pointed her phone at him through the glass, then scurried away. It was the little things. The way he spoke, each sentence so deliberate, like it had been written first and memorized. The way he carried himself, not arrogantly, not at all, but with a kind of quiet awareness, like someone who'd spent his whole life being looked at and was still deciding how he felt about it. On Thursday afternoon, while reorganizing the mystery section, Charlotte found him sitting cross-legged on the floor with a stack of Agatha Christie novels in one hand and a child's drawing clutched in the other. You okay? She asked, coming around the aisle. He looked up quickly, folding the drawing and slipping it into his coat pocket before she could get a good look. Yeah, he said, clearing his throat. Just got caught in the story. She smiled. You're either the most charming handyman I've ever hired or the most dramatic one. Nick grinned faintly. Maybe both. Charlotte tilted her head. So where are you from? You keep dodging that question. He looked up at her. Does it matter? Not if you're running from a criminal record or a Vegas marriage. He laughed. No criminal record. No Vegas wife. Just needed a break. Charlotte leaned against the shelf, arms crossed. From what? A pause. Then, noise. People. Too many voices in my head that weren't mine. It was honest. Too honest, maybe. And that's when Charlotte started to wonder. That night, after closing, she poured herself a glass of red wine and sat down with her laptop at the kitchen table. She typed slowly at first, then faster. Nick Rivers, actor? Musician? Celebrity? Kerouac tattoo? Her screen filled with vague search results and pseudonyms. Nothing concrete. She clicked through a few pages, sighing at the sea of filtered faces. Then, without thinking, she typed something different. Henry Cole plus Bookstore, Vermont. And there he was. The sunglasses. The beanie. That crooked, easy smile. Henry Cole. Global pop icon. Multi-platinum albums. Tabloid magnate. Recently vanished from the public eye after a very public breakup and a viral red carpet walkout. Charlotte stared at the photo, her heart tapping quietly against her ribs. So that's why his face felt familiar. Why his voice made people turn. She leaned back in her chair, wine forgotten, and exhaled slowly. He'd lied. But he hadn't acted like someone trying to fool her. He hadn't asked for attention or special treatment. He just showed up, shelved books, made her laugh, and read mystery novels on the floor like it was the most normal thing in the world. Still, a lie was a lie. And Charlotte Carter wasn't in the habit of letting people write fiction into her real life. She closed the laptop gently and sat there in the quiet, the bookstore's key heavy in her coat pocket and her thoughts spinning faster than the winter wind outside. Tomorrow, she'd confront him. And for once, the story would be hers to tell. The next morning, Charlotte opened the hollow shelf earlier than usual, the sky still a dull watercolor of pinks and gray. Snow had fallen overnight, a soft dusting that made everything feel freshly rewritten. But Charlotte wasn't in the mood for new beginnings. She busied herself at the front counter, dusting shelves that didn't need dusting and pretending the kettle's whistle didn't sound like nerves boiling over. She had rehearsed the confrontation half a dozen ways, some calm, some sarcastic, a few too sharp. But now that he was about to walk through the door, her chest buzzed with something else. Disappointment, maybe. The bell above the door rang at 8:07. Henry stepped inside, brushing snow from his shoulders, his cheeks red from the cold. He smiled the same easy smile. "Morning," he said. "I brought pastries. The good ones. From that bakery on Hollow Street." "Henry." He stopped, pastry box in hand, snow still melting in his hair. Her voice was low, steady. "Or is it Nick today?" He didn't move. For a moment, neither of them did. The quiet crackled with truth and the absence of it. Then he gently set the box on the counter. "I was hoping it wouldn't matter." Charlotte folded her arms. "Why? Because I don't read tabloids? Because you thought I'd just never notice you're Henry freaking Cole." He winced at the full name, like hearing it in this quiet, book-scented space made it heavier somehow. "No," he said softly. "Because for the first time in years, I wasn't him around you." Charlotte stared at him, her jaw tight. "You could have told me." "I wanted to," he said, voice almost a whisper. "But every time I tried, it felt like stepping off a cliff. And I was happy. Just being here. Being seen, not recognized." Charlotte leaned against the counter, exhaling. "I don't care that you're famous, Henry. I care that you lied." "I know," he said. "And I'm sorry. I didn't come here with a plan. I didn't mean to involve you in any of this. I saw this place, this town, you, and something in me needed to stop pretending for a while." She studied him, really looked at him. His carefully tousled hair was damp at the edges. His eyes were tired, not from a sleepless night, but from too many years spent behind a curtain of applause and expectation. There was nothing polished about him now. He looked human. Frayed. Real. "I'm not mad because you're famous," she said slowly. "I'm mad because I trusted you. I let you into my bookstore, into this quiet thing I built with my hands, and you weren't honest with me." He nodded. "You're right. I don't know what to do with this," she admitted, voice cracking just slightly. "Do I treat you like a customer now? A stranger? Some guy on a billboard I never wanted to meet?" He stepped closer, not enough to breach her space, but enough to be heard clearly. "No," he said. "You treat me like someone who made a mistake and is willing to do whatever it takes to earn your trust again." Charlotte didn't respond right away. Outside, a child's laughter echoed through the street as a sled scraped across snow. Inside, her heart wrestled with the two truths trying to live in the same room. That she'd liked the man who read mystery novels and flannel shirts. And that man was also the one whose life wasn't just complicated, it was public. "I need time," she said finally. "I'll give you all the time you need," he replied. "But I'm not leaving. Not unless you ask me to." She hesitated, then slowly turned and walked into the back room without another word. Henry didn't follow. Instead, he sat on the floor near the front window, next to a display of winter romance novels, and opened a box of donations. Quietly, carefully, as if every book he unpacked might be the one to win her back. By the end of the week, the town had started to whisper. It wasn't loud, not yet. Not the screaming headlines or paparazzi madness Henry had known in Los Angeles or London, but quieter. Sharper in some ways. A sideways glance at the grocery store. A slightly too long pause at the coffee shop. A mother tugging her daughter away from the front window of the hollow shelf, where Henry now stood every morning, sweeping snow off the sidewalk. Charlotte felt it before she heard it. The questions. The assumptions. The simmer of curiosity that could so easily boil into something more. She tried to ignore it. She told herself the worst had passed. She'd confronted him. He'd apologized. And day by day, he was showing up, not as a celebrity, but as a man who was trying. He took out the trash, fixed the back door's sticky hinge, repainted the staff-only sign without being asked. He'd become part of the store's rhythm. But it couldn't last. On a gray Wednesday afternoon, the storm finally arrived, not with thunder, but with a buzz. It was Greta Hammond, local realtor, self-declared town connector, and professional gossiper, who brought the news. She burst through the bookstore doors, snow still clinging to her boots, a phone clutched in her red manicured hand like a victory flag. "Charlotte," she chirped, breathless, "you've gone viral." Charlotte looked up from the counter. "Excuse me?" Greta turned her phone around. There, on the glowing screen, was a TikTok video, 10 seconds long, of Henry crouched in front of a shelf, laughing at something a little boy was saying about dragons and detective stories. The caption read, "Henry Cole spotted in Vermont bookstore, flushed face, dizzy, hiding in plain sight." It had over 300,000 views. Charlotte felt the ground shift under her. "I didn't post it," Greta added quickly. "But people are talking. All over." Apparently, some college student from Brattleboro came in last week, recognized him, and posted it. It's everywhere. Henry had walked out from the back room just in time to hear it. His face went still. "I can take it down," Greta said hastily. "Or try. But it's out there now." Charlotte nodded absently, her throat tight. Greta lingered just long enough to share 3 more updates, a handful of unsolicited career advice, and a wink that made Charlotte want to scream. Then she was gone, and the store felt 5 degrees colder. Henry spoke first. Quietly. "I'm sorry." Charlotte didn't look at him. "This was always going to happen, wasn't it? I didn't plan it. But you knew." He exhaled, stepping forward. "I thought maybe I'd get a few weeks. I didn't think I'd get you." She looked at him then, and for the first time in days, she didn't just see the man in flannel sorting books. She saw the crowd that followed behind him. The cameras. The scrutiny. The online mobs and rumors and beautiful, terrible noise that came with someone like Henry Cole. That night, she lay in bed, scrolling through hundreds of comments on videos and articles she hadn't asked to be in. Some were kind, curious, but some weren't. One called her plain. Another suggested she was clout chasing. Someone had already found her Facebook profile. She locked her phone and turned off the lamp, the dark feeling like a wall pressing in from all sides. She loved her quiet, her shop, her life, but she was starting to wonder if loving him meant losing it all. Charlotte hadn't cried in years, not in the messy, chest-tight, soul-wrung kind of way. But Friday morning, she stood in the back room of her bookstore, holding her phone like a loaded weapon, her breath catching, her hands shaking. And it happened. Ugly. Uninvited. Immediate. The article had gone live overnight. Not a quick social post or a harmless rumor, but a full spread on a glossy entertainment site with 1 million readers and a bottomless comment section. The headline burned into her eyes. Small-town seduction. Who is Charlotte Carter, the bookstore girl who caught Henry Cole? The piece dug in deep. Photos, clearly taken without permission, of her locking the front door, of Henry stacking boxes inside the shop, of them walking side by side down Maplewood's main street, smiling like idiots. Worse were the words. They twisted her background, an old yearbook photo, a college blog she hadn't touched in a decade, a blurry photo of her at a book fair, into a narrative that made her feel like a punchline. Sources say she's just a quiet local girl, but with ties to regional journalism and an eye for publicity, it's unclear whether this is a real romance or a brilliant PR play. PR play, as if her entire existence had been staged for some media stunt. As if she wasn't real. Charlotte sat on a stack of shipping boxes, fingers digging into the edge of the cardboard, willing herself not to scream. The bell at the front rang, light and oblivious. She didn't move. Henry's voice floated in. "Charlotte." She didn't answer. He came into the room slowly, cautiously. His eyes searched hers the way a man searches for a wound he knows he caused but can't locate. "I saw it," he said. "Of course you did," she replied, her voice hollow. "It's everywhere." He crouched beside her, but she didn't meet his gaze. "I'll release a statement," he said. "I'll tell them to back off." "You think that'll stop it?" she asked. "You think a tweet will erase this? They don't care what you say. They'll just twist it again. They always do." Henry swallowed hard. "Then let's go somewhere else. Get out of here. Just you and me." She laughed, sharp and bitter. "Where would we go, Henry? You don't get to disappear. Not really. You show up, and the world follows. And now it's following me." His shoulders dropped. "I didn't want this for you. But it still happened." He tried to reach for her hand. She pulled away. "You're not the problem," she said, voice softer now. "You're a good man, Henry. And I." She choked on the next words, the ones she hadn't said out loud until now. "I think I was falling for you." That broke something in him. He reached for her again, slower this time. "Then let's fight for it." She finally looked at him. "I don't want to spend my life fighting, Henry. That's what you do on stage, online, in interviews. I want peace. I want quiet. I want to wake up and not worry about who's photographing my coffee mug." He nodded, blinking fast. "I understand." A long silence fell between them. The kind that hums like grief. "I need space," she whispered. He didn't argue. He just stood silent, like a man holding something too delicate to speak. "I'll go," he said finally. He turned once at the door, his eyes glassy, his mouth set like he'd swallowed goodbye and hadn't figured out how to spit it out. Then he was gone. And Charlotte sat alone in the dim back room of her bookstore. The snow outside still falling like nothing had changed, even though everything had. The snow had stopped, but Maplewood still wore winter like a memory it didn't want to forget. It had been 8 days since Henry left. Charlotte counted them only because the silence in her shop had changed. The corners felt colder. The hours stretched longer. The sunlight came through the windows like it was looking for someone who wasn't there anymore. She hadn't told anyone what happened. Not her best friend Kelsey, not her father, not the regulars who came in and asked with curious glances, "Where's that new guy?" She just said he left. Because what else was there to say? He left, and he took the noise with him. But also the warmth. The humming. The sudden laughter between the shelves. The absurdity of catching a global pop star reading Charlotte's Web out loud in the children's section, just because he liked the way the spider talked. And now, the hollow shelf had returned to its normal rhythm. Safe. Predictable. Quiet. Until Friday. It was 3:04 p.m. story hour. The weekly event where a small cluster of restless toddlers and half-listening parents gathered in the back reading nook for picture books and cookies. Charlotte had just finished the snowy day and was handing out gingerbread men when the front door opened, and the air changed. She didn't see him right away. She heard it, the hush that spread from the front door all the way down the aisles. A mother gasped. Someone dropped a travel mug. Then, the soft, deliberate thud of boots on hardwood. Henry Cole. No sunglasses. No entourage. Just him. Wearing a forest green coat, scarf tucked loosely around his neck, and something unmistakably fragile in his eyes. Charlotte stood frozen, a gingerbread cookie still in her hand. He walked toward her slowly, no camera in sight. Just real time, real space. Real risk. Then he crouched down in front of the kids. "Mind if I read something?" he asked, looking up at her like the answer mattered more than anything he'd ever sung in an arena. Charlotte opened her mouth and nodded, speechless. He took the book from her lap, Where the Wild Things Are, and sat cross-legged in the circle of children, all staring wide-eyed at the man who somehow looked like a dream and a friend at the same time. With gentle cadence, Henry read. And Max, the king of all wild things, was lonely and wanted to be where someone loved him best of all. His voice cracked just a little at that part. He kept going. When he finished, the kids clapped instinctively, like the applause was built into the air around him. Henry handed the book back to Charlotte and stood, looking at her, not them. "I know I don't belong here," he said softly, just for her. "But I'd give up every stadium and spotlight to be part of your world, even if it's just behind the register or stacking books you've already alphabetized." Charlotte blinked fast. "And I'm sorry," he added, "for bringing chaos into your life, for making you choose between loving me and protecting yourself. I never wanted to be something you had to survive." A pause. "I just wanted to be something you could trust." Her throat tightened. Every part of her remembered the days before him, how easy things were, but also how quiet, how small. Henry had shown up and broken everything open, not just the peace, but the parts of her that had stopped believing in magic, in risks, in second chances. And now here he was, not hiding, not running, just standing there, asking. Charlotte stepped closer. "I never stopped trusting you," she said. "I just didn't trust the world you came from." "Then let's make a new one," he said, almost a whisper. "Ours." A pause. The kind that holds the weight of both forgiveness and the first moment of falling. Then she smiled. Not the bookstore smile. The real one. And in that moment, Charlotte Carter kissed Henry Cole between the shelves of the hollow shelf, with gingerbread crumbs on the floor, children giggling nearby, and the smell of paper and pine floating through the air like a promise. The headlines came, of course. Photos of the kiss in the hollow shelf. TikToks filmed through the fogged windows. Articles speculating whether Charlotte was pregnant, she wasn't. Whether Henry was retiring, he wasn't sure. And what brand of tea she drank in the mornings, Maplewood chai, but they'd never get that part right. But then slowly they faded. The internet got bored. New scandals, younger faces, louder stories. And Charlotte Carter and Henry Cole stopped being a headline. They became something smaller. And much more real. They didn't move away. They didn't buy a house in Malibu or a cottage in Italy. They stayed in Maplewood. Henry found an apartment above the bakery. The rent was overpriced, the plumbing moody, but he liked the smell of bread in the morning and the fact that no one ever asked him to sing when he went downstairs for coffee. Charlotte kept the bookstore. Of course she did. Only now, the reading nook was a little larger. A new bookshelf near the front window held signed copies of debut authors Henry had met on tour. Writers he supported quietly, without press releases. Sometimes he signed books, too, but only if a customer asked with kindness and didn't treat him like a zoo exhibit. They set boundaries. No interviews. No social media posts together. No red carpets. But yes to Sunday mornings in socks and flannel. Yes to snow days spent organizing the poetry section. Yes to leaving the porch light on when one of them stayed late. It wasn't easy. There were fights. Tension. Adjustments. Henry had nightmares some nights, the kind that left him sweating with half-formed lyrics on his tongue. Charlotte sometimes forgot what it was like to not brace herself when a stranger walked in with a phone in hand. But they were learning. To speak. To listen. To not run. One evening, months later, they stood on the back porch of the bookstore, hands wrapped around mismatched mugs, watching the snowfall blanket the street below. Henry nudged her gently with his shoulder. "Do you ever miss what it was like before?" he asked. "Before I showed up with my fake name and tragic tape gun skills?" Charlotte smiled, leaning into him. "Sometimes. Yeah. But not in the way you think," she said. "I miss the silence, but I don't miss feeling like I was the only one in it." Henry nodded. "I used to be surrounded by noise and still feel alone. You changed that." She looked up at him, brushing snow from the collar of his coat. "You're not just a star, Henry." He smirked. "You trying to write my new bio?" "No," she said softly. "I'm writing our story, and you're just a guy in it." He leaned down and kissed her, slow and warm, while the snow kept falling around them. And for the first time in years, neither of them was performing. They were just living, loud enough to matter, quiet enough to be heard. Together.